There are a lot of legendary effects in 76, and now we've just gotten 4-star legendaries, so choosing which ones to use on your particular weapon can be confusing, especially if you're a newer player. So I'm going to show you the absolute best legendary effects that will never let you down, regardless of your weapon or build choice, and I'm calling them the Wasteland Trinity. And yes, there is a Wasteland Trinity for each star. So let's get into it. Now, in choosing the best legendary effects, I didn't just want to go for the obvious, oh, this one does the most damage, that's the best, call it a day. No, damage is not the only consideration. They also need to be versatile and also not rely on you executing some ridiculous combo or needing a massive setup to get them working. I wanted legendary effects that just do their thing regardless of what you're doing, never let you down, regardless of your build or weapon choice. You just hop in and you know that they're going to be working for you. So with that being said, let's take a look at the Wasteland Trinity of 1st-star legendaries, and they are anti-armor, vampires, and quad. So why anti-armor instead of something like bloodied? Well, anti-armor performs pretty much on par with bloodied, but it doesn't care if you're full health, half health, low health. It will always work the same for you. To get the most out of bloodied, well, you need to be very bloodied, and that's not the build for everyone, and based off of experience from running the latest endgame activities like the raid, it's just not a popular choice overall for that either. Aristocrats, you need to keep your caps high to get the most out of that, and it's only a 50% increase as well. Executioners, still multiplicative as far as I know, but that only kicks in at 40% health on enemies, so that doesn't make the cut. Anti-armor doesn't need any setup, it just does its thing. Also, anti-armor is very important, particularly on weapons that lack good armor penetration or outright miss an armor penetration per card like shotguns do. So overall, anti-armor is just going to be putting in the work for you. If you decide to change up your build a bit, you don't need to re-roll your weapon or find a new one. If you were on a bloodied one, for example, anti-armor is anti-armor. So if you're looking for a damage-focused 1st-star legendary, then look no further than anti-armor. And now I can stop saying anti-armor. Next up, we have vampires, not a damage-focused legendary effect, more of a quality of life effect. There's not much not to love about vampires. Even in the toughest content, it will keep you alive. So whether you're a new player or a high-level player, vampires will save you in many situations. It'll save you constantly having to use your stim packs or completely negate the need for stim packs completely. It can keep you standing out in the open to continue your DPS phase instead of having to run and hide to heal up. Vampires doesn't need any setup or particular build. As long as you damage something, it will work and heal you. It even has synergy with things that you might not think it does, like the ricochet per card, for example. If you're using a vampire's weapon and enemies attack you and the ricochet hits them, it procs vampires and heals you. The only time it isn't as good as it normally is if you're using a very slow firing weapon or a slow melee weapon. It does perform better on automatic weapons, both melee and ranged, but even so, it still makes the top list here. It's just always a good option to go for, and let's be honest, if you're going into something like the raid or a savage strike daily ops and you're using a rifle or, a sledgehammer, that's not Vampire's fault, that's on you. And last but not least, completing the 1st-star legendary Wasteland Trinity, we have a quad. Again, not a damage-focused legendary effect, but one that can actually increase your DPS and make some unusable weapons usable. Quad, of course, massively increases your magazine size, which means less reloading and longer sustained damage output, so gets you better DPS. Also, some weapons have very small magazine sizes, so they can become top choices or just at least viable choices thanks to quad. It's more quality of life, but it does way more than you might think. It also doesn't need any particular setup or build. It will just work regardless. Of course, quad is not available for melee weapons, so we'll throw in another option here just because technically it isn't a complete trinity for melee users. So in that case, even though there is some setup required, bloodied or aristocrats can take the 3rd spot here for melee users. The rest of the 1st-star choices are either just way too situational or downright terrible. But moving on to the 2nd-star legendaries, things actually get tough here because there are a lot of really good effects, but also a lot of them are very build dependent, so choosing ones that are versatile and work in the majority of situations was tough, but the 3 winners are Rapid, Explosive, and Hitman's. But I've also put a little asterisk here, which I'll get to in a moment. Starting off with a Rapid, it gives your weapon a faster fire rate. That's pretty self-explanatory. Deal damage quicker, deal with enemies quicker, and it can make slower firing weapons feel way better and increase their performance. It can also pair very well with something like vampires on a slower weapon, increasing its speed, so vampires procs faster. It has synergy. Doesn't matter on your build or weapon choice really, and even on melee weapons you can still get Rapid. Instead of the fire rate, it's just swing rate. Same thing, so Rapid definitely a top choice. Next up, we have Explosive, and it's a very popular choice, and there's good reasons for that. It's a solid damage increase for your second star. It can help you get tags on enemies at large events, and well, most people just love explosions, so it kind of makes sense that Explosive is a popular go-to second star. It also has its legacy history, which, finally got solved, but hey, if you still want a broken legacy explosive energy weapon, that's one hell of a sentence. It's not fixed in Fallout 4, so you can go experience it there. It won't work on every single weapon just because, well, there is a logic, and even in Fallout logic, you're not firing bullets from a Tesla rifle or a flamer, so yeah, it's not going to work on those, but hey, still got other options. And speaking of other options, we have Hitman's, another solid damage increase choice for your second star. You get more damage when you aim, not much setup or requirement there, so it definitely makes the list and quite a solid choice, particularly on heavy guns and people who don't use VATS. But speaking of VATS, like I said, at the beginning, there is an asterisk because VATS is a very popular way to play the game, and it's part of Fallout's DNA, so I can't exactly not include any VATS legendary effects here. So we do have an additional Wasteland Trinity here for second star legendaries, and that version has Rapid, Vital, and VATS enhanced. Rapid, of course, still keeps its spot, but Explosive and Hitman's make way. Vital, of course, increases your critical hit damage, so for any VAT crit focused builds, it's a great choice and an excellent option to go for, especially with some of the recent VATS changes. And then VATS enhanced, increasing your accuracy in VATS. Some weapons definitely need that, others do not, but again, it's just a perk that works regardless of what you're doing. No setup required as long as you're using VATS. VATS enhanced will, enhance that for you. But we also have to have a third Wasteland Trinity here for second star legendaries because most of these aren't exactly applicable to melee weapons. So once again, Rapid keeps its spot because it just changes to swing speed instead of fire rate, so that's fine. But the other two go to heavy hitters and inertial. So heavy hitters, more damage on your power attacks. Very, very strong choice, particularly on automatic melee weapons, which are considered to always be power attacking. So things like your auto axe and chainsaw can really benefit from this effect. But even on non-auto melee weapons, power attack damage is a great effect and can get you some insane one-hit damage numbers. Inertial is just more quality of life and works regardless of what you're doing. Power attacking costs AP. Automatic weapons always use AP, so getting AP back for kills can just keep you going for a longer time in a fight, and the same for regular melee. If you're power attacking and running around like a crazed wastelander, well, getting AP back is always a good thing. Moving on to third star legendary effects, we're also quite spoiled with choices, much like with the second star. So for this Wasteland Trinity, we have Swift, Lightweight, and Durability. And once again, I'll add an asterisk. Swift, much like Rapid, is self-explanatory. Faster reload speed, which is always a good thing. Always nice to have, works on whatever weapon or build you might be going for, helps with your DPS, and gets you back in the fight faster. Lightweight massively decreases the weight of your weapon, and some weapons can get really heavy, even the rifles, so always good to have regardless of what your weapon choice is. This also helps you carry more loot, so it has a knock-on effect and official approved loot goblin status. Durability, of course, increases the life of your weapon. You don't want things breaking in the middle of a long fight. Durability has your back. All of these don't require anything specific from you or your build. They're just doing their thing, which is what we like. But now for that asterisk. Once again, gotta take into consideration the importance and love for VAT-focused builds. So for the second star, Wasteland Trinity, we have Swift, VATS optimized, and Lucky. Swift, of course, maintains a position with lightweight and durability being replaced. VATS optimized is exactly as it sounds. Cheaper VATS, very important and useful for VATS-focused builds. Cheaper VATS is just always a good thing. Lucky helps with your critical charge. So for VATS builds, particularly going for crits, it is also ideal and very useful to have. We also have to include a slight change from melee builds because, again, a lot of these are not available on melee or just completely useless on melee. So Strength is replacing Swift. Strength, always good for melee builds, more damage, more carry weight, and now it's +3, so just a solid option for any melee users. And now moving on to the latest and greatest 4th star legendaries, which was of course just added in the Gleaming Depths update. The legendary effects here can be extremely build specific, so this was quite tough to find universally useful ones. So for the Wasteland Trinity here, we have bullies, pinpointers, and stabilizers. Other options are excellent. For example, pyromaniacs for a flamer is the go-to choice, but it's highly specific. Vampires on a poison auto axe, also excellent, but also very specific, so that's why those things don't make the cut yet, because we are looking for overall goodness and versatility. So first up, stabilizers. Stabilizers just makes your weapon feel good. Stability and less recoil. Always a nice thing to have, especially with some weapons in the game being absolutely horrendous to try and control. So stabilizers can make a big difference, and it can work on many different weapons, so it definitely makes the cut. Bullies is a bit more specific, so for non-VATS builds, gives that 50% increase to weak spot damage. That's very nice, no requirements besides not using VATS, so that's easy and always there for you. Pinpointers, the exact opposite, 50% increase in damage for specifically targeting specific parts. So for VATS builds, using VATS, that's always there for you. And we just have one more Wasteland Trinity because melee weapons. And the three choices here go to Pounders, Encirclers, and Fences. Pounders, very, very powerful and also bugged at the moment, so expect an eventual patch for that. But even if it does get patched, it's still a really awesome choice and a nice damage boost all the way up to 100% increase. And auto melee weapons just make use of that so well. Encirclers, the more enemies around you, the more damage you do. With melee, you get right back into the thick of things, so it just synergizes perfectly. And Fences, just a straight up extra melee damage increase, which is hard to argue against, particularly when there's no specific requirements for it besides using a melee weapon. Simple but effective. And that is it for the very best, most versatile and useful legendary effects that you can go for in Fallout 76 currently. If you enjoyed, then do me a favor and hit that like button and consider subscribing if you want to see more Fallout content. But for now, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.